And then we went on to define a system in general, because having an idea about a system is important when it comes to studying information systems. And then we moved on to define an information system, illustrating it consists of different components, and also it focuses on certain objectives. Then we identified fundamental roles of information systems in business. Again, we highlighted three main reasons the businesses focus on, or businesses have when they implement information technology and information systems in organizations. Then we highlighted about the trends in information systems, so the evolution of information systems from 1950s and 60s to up to now. Then we introduced e-business, and we gave a definition for e-business, which highlighted that it consists of number of areas like this empowering business processes, e-commerce, enterprise collaboration within a company and with its customers, suppliers, and other business stakeholders. So we elaborated more on e-business and what it consists of, and about the IT infrastructure that is behind electronic business. Then yes, then again we identified what the organizations basically want to achieve utilizing e-business applications. Then we went on to discuss about types of information systems, and there we mentioned that basically the information systems can be divided into two categories. One is operation support systems and the other one is management support systems. And we focused on this particular figure where we highlighted that there are three main categories of information systems coming under operation support systems. And also there are three other categories of systems coming under management support systems. But apart from that, there are four other specialized information systems which we could identify. Then we started talking about each and every category, starting with operation support systems and discussing the three main categories under that, starting with TPS, then process control systems, and then enterprise collaboration systems. Then moved on to management support systems. Again, we highlighted the three main categories of systems there, MIS, DSS, and EIS. And thereafter, we focused on the particular four specialized categories like expert systems, knowledge management systems, strategic information systems, and functional business systems. Then we moved on to identify how we can measure the success of information technology. And then we highlighted that success of information technology can be measured utilizing two dimensions. One is efficiency and the other one is effectiveness. And we highlighted what we mean by efficiency, or how we can determine whether this particular information technology is efficient or not. And also we highlighted how we can determine whether the information technology that we utilize or the information system that we utilize is effective. Then we discussed about challenges and ethics of IT, and we identified different challenges faced by organizations when they introduce and implement information technology and systems into their organizations. First, we identify some potential harm the organizations may face. And then we identified some potential risks the organizations may face. And then we identified some possible responses the organizations can take. So that is where we stopped during the last session. Give me 1 second. I think some glare is coming. Okay, if you have any question about the last session, you can raise it now. Okay, we can move to the next section where we focus on system concepts, the foundation. And again, we are giving a definition here, and we have already given a definition for a system in the last session. But we are giving it again, but we give a more elaborated or an extended version here. A system is defined as a set of interrelated components with a clearly defined boundary working together to achieve a common set of objectives. I think up to this point, you can remember that we have highlighted it last time. A system is a set of interrelated components, and we said that there should be a specified boundary for any system. And these components work together to achieve a particular set objective or set of objectives or goals. So that was highlighted last time, but here we elaborate more how we are going to achieve it by accepting inputs and producing outputs in an organized transformation process. Now, how we are going to achieve the particular goals or objectives by accepting inputs into the systems and also by producing outputs. How do you produce in an organized transformation process? So we can convert inputs into output through a transformation process, and it has to be an organized transformation process, indicating that it has to be a planned a set of activities that we do there under transformation. It has to be some sort of, say, structured mechanism that we use in the transformation process. So that is what is indicated by this organized transformation process. We can't just convert inputs into output. There should be a plan that we have to convert those inputs into output. So there should be a particular set of steps that we use to transform the inputs into outputs. So that is the definition for a system we are giving today. And we can use it maybe in our future discussions, and also you can keep this definition is in mind because this is a more complete definition. Then we focus on basic functions of a system, and we can basically identify 3 basic functions. What are those 3 basic functions? Input, processing, and output. Definitely, you may have heard about these components. So anyhow, we will look at what they are, and it can refresh your memories. Input involves capturing and assembling elements that enter the system to be processed. Now, the input is an activity or a function which basically captures and assembles elements. So input activity should capture the particular elements to be entered into the system. And also maybe the particular elements that we capture may not be entered into a system as it is. You may need to assemble it. You may need to put it into a particular format, or you may have to organize them before put the particular elements into the system. So therefore, capturing is one thing, and capturing the data that has been captured or the elements that have been captured may not be entered into a system directly. So therefore, we may need some sort of organization. We may need some sort of rearrangement. We need some sort of assembling the particular elements before they are entered into the system. Now, two examples are given in a manufacturing setup. We may input raw materials as inputs into the manufacturing process. And then in an information system, we can think about data which we enter into the system. They must be secured and organized for processing. Now, the input data that we capture should be secured. We should keep them in a secured place. And also, as I mentioned earlier, organized for processing, we should put them into a proper format so that we can process the particular data. So therefore, the elements or the data, whatever it is that we input, which are in the original form, may not be suitable to be processed. So therefore, we need some sort of organization or some sort of arrangement or some sort of assembling before that is processed. Then processing involves transformation processes that convert input into output. Now, processing is the function which basically transforms the input that we entered into the system into an output. Now, the example given here says manufacturing process, so which may basically convert the raw materials that we entered into finished products. And also in an information system, the data may be processed utilizing certain mathematical calculations. So therefore, mathematical calculations may be utilized in the processing stage or in the processing function to convert, say, data into information. Then output. Output involves transferring elements that have been produced by a transformation process to their ultimate destination. So output is the third basic function. So it transfers the elements that have been produced by a transformation process to their ultimate destination. Now output is not just getting the final product. So it is basically transferring the elements or dissemination of the particular, say, reports or something like that to the ultimate destination. So the output activity will get what has been produced after the transformation process or after the processing function, and that will be delivered or that will be transferred or that will be disseminated to the ultimate destination. Finished products or management information, so they must be transmitted to their human users. So finished products may be transferred to a particular place, and it can be the warehouse. So the output activity will perform that particular activity. The finished products are basically produced at the end of the second stage, at the end of the second function, that is processing, and output activity will involve in transferring or delivering the particular finished products to the ultimate destination. It can be a warehouse for finished products. And when it comes to information systems, what do we produce after processing? So we end up with certain reports or certain set of information. And then those reports or the set of information should be delivered to their ultimate human users. So that is the output activity. Okay. Then we are moving on to identify two more functions identified as feedback and control. So we will see why they are important for a particular system. The system concept becomes even more useful by including two additional elements, feedback and control. Now, as highlighted here, when it comes to a system, and system can be more useful or a system can be more effective when we add these particular two functions, feedback and control. So therefore, on the other hand, in the absence of feedback and control functions in a particular system, those systems may lack certain things. So those systems may not be that effective. Those systems may not be that useful for an organization for different reasons, which you may realize after looking at the feedback and control functions. Now, feedback is data about the performance of a system. Feedback is data about the performance of a system. So we may have to monitor the performance of the system to see whether the system performs or system works according to our expectations. So otherwise, there is a problem with that particular system. So as we mentioned earlier, when we prepare systems, or when we develop systems, or when we install systems, we want to achieve certain objectives through the particular system or systems. So therefore, we need to measure the performance of the system to see whether we can achieve the expected objectives from the particular system. So otherwise, as we highlighted earlier, the particular system will not be useful. The particular system will not be effective. The feedback component example says data about sales performance are feedback to a sales manager. Now sales there can be a sales processing system. So there we may have to measure the sales performance to determine whether we are going to achieve the expected objectives or not. And then we can measure the sales performance from time to time. It can be on a daily basis, or it can be on a weekly basis, or something like that. So anyhow, we may measure it periodically to determine whether we are going to achieve the objectives that we set at the beginning. And so data about the performance of the particular sales system can be considered as data, can be considered as the feedback. Data about the performance of sales system can be considered as feedback of the particular sales system or sales processing system. Then control involves monitoring and evaluating feedback to determine whether a system is moving toward the achievement of its goal. Now, control element monitors and evaluates the feedback. So as I mentioned earlier, we need to measure the performance of the particular system. So that is done at the control stage. This is the data regarding the performance. This is the monitoring and evaluating that we do to determine whether we are going to achieve the expected objectives or goal. And then the control function then makes the necessary adjustment to a system's input and processing components to ensure that it produces proper output. Now, if we find that the system is going to achieve the expected objectives, we do not want to make any adjustments or any changes to the existing system. But when we monitor and when we evaluate the particular results, if we find that the system is not going to achieve the expected objectives or goals, then we need to do certain adjustments to the particular system. Then where are we going to make the particular adjustments? So we need to adjust the input function, or we need to adjust the processing function or the processing components to ensure that it produces the output. So therefore, after feedback, there will be a control function evaluating the particular feedback to determine whether we can achieve the expected objectives or not through that particular system. So if not, we are basically going to make certain adjustments to the existing system's input component or the processing component, or input function or the processing function. Now, the example says sales manager exercises control when reassigning salespersons to sales territories after evaluating feedback about their sales performance. So as I mentioned earlier, sales performance can be evaluated periodically, and then the sales managers can determine whether they are going to achieve the expected objective set at the beginning. And if not, so they need some corrective action, and so therefore they may decide on various actions that they can take. And as highlighted here, when reassigning salespersons to sales territories, because we may have set certain objectives in relation to sales territories or the sales regions, and we may have to achieve sales particular certain sales targets in certain sales territories. But with the earlier set of sales persons, if we cannot achieve the particular say objective or goal, so we may change the sales people allocated for the particular. Please keep your phones mute unless you talk. Okay, so therefore, through the control function, we can decide on the course of actions that we can take. So depending on where we are heading, and depending on whether we can achieve the expected objectives or not, we need some corrective action. So that will be taken at the control function, at the control stage. So therefore, overall, we identified 5 components or 5 functions which is there in a system. But we mentioned that there are 3 basic functions: input, processing, and output. But in addition to that, there will be or there should be 2 other functions, feedback and control, to make the particular systems more useful and effective. Okay, is there any question regarding the 5 components or 5 functions of a system?
It was clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, we are moving to identify some other system characteristics. Figure 1.18 uses a business organization to illustrate the fundamental components of a system, as well as several other system characteristics. Now we are going to look at the fundamental components of a system when we take the business organization as an example. So that is highlighted in figure 1.18. And so the fundamental components and some other system characteristics. So we will look at the particular figure, and this is a system which functions within an organization. Now this is the system boundary, and outside the system boundary you can see the business environment. The stakeholders in the business environment are there. So then these are the fundamental components: input, processing, and output. But other than that, we can see the other components like feedback and control, or other characteristics like feedback and control, as we highlighted earlier. Because we can accomplish or we can transform the inputs into output by having these 3 fundamental components. But as we highlighted earlier, the system may not be effective without the feedback and control functions. Then we will go back to the previous slide. Note that the system does not exist in a vacuum. Rather, it exists and functions in an environment containing other systems. Now, when it comes to a system, it does not exist in a vacuum, it says, and it exists and function in an environment containing other system. Now, this is the organization's environment or the microenvironment for the organization within which we can identify a particular system, even though here we say this is a system, and when it comes to an actual situation, there can be many systems operating inside the organization performing different transformations, performing different conversions. Now, so therefore, within the particular say microenvironment or within the particular organization's environment also there can be different systems or number of systems, and also the this particular say organizational system itself operates in a business environment where there are many other stakeholders, and when we consider other stakeholders, they also have their own systems. So therefore, this specific organizational system operates in a business environment where there are many other systems. So that is what it says. It does not operate in a vacuum, but it operates in an environment having many other systems. Then, if a system is one of the components of a larger system, if a particular system is one of the components of a larger system, it's a subsystem. And the larger system is its environment. Now, so when it comes to a particular system, so we may be in a position to identify certain smaller systems which are within a larger system. Now again, now if it is to be a particular system, we know that it should have at least three basic components or three basic functions: input, processing, and output. So therefore, if it is a say sales system, or if it is an accounting system, so inside the particular say broader category of accounting system or sales system or production system, there can be various other subsystems operate. So if it is accounting systems, I think we took examples like accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, and so on. So those are subsystems operating inside the overall accounting system. So therefore, if we consider a particular smaller system like accounts payable system, so then for that particular system here it says the larger system is its environment. That means the accounting system will be its environment. So likewise, we can think about the subsystems operating inside a larger system. And yes, so inputs here, now this is a general example in relation to an organization. So the input here, you can identify different types of input can be there in an organizational environment: people, money, material, machines, land, facilities, energy, information, or it can be data. And business processes can include market, develop, produce, and deliver products and services, support customers and other processes. And goods and the output can include the goods and services like products it produces, services, payments, contributions, information, and other effects. So therefore, these are the outputs which we may identify in an organizational setup. Then we can get get data about the performance of these particular systems through the information systems. So getting data about the performance of the particular system is feedback, which can be performed by information systems of the organization. And then the particular feedback data will be further evaluated by the management and then take necessary action accordingly. So Yeah, that is about, I think, no, it continues. If you have any question up to now, you can raise now. It can be the efforts, no? Here it is not clearly stated, efforts made by the employees in doing something. So here actually the term information is not that correct. I think it should be data, because we get information here as the output. Okay, we'll continue, and then several systems may share the same environment. Some of these systems may be connected to one another by means of a shared boundary or interface. So as I mentioned earlier, within the organizational environment also, there can be number of systems operating, and that means that those systems share that particular environment. But again, then there can be this business environment, and when you consider the business environment, not only this particular organization is operating there, there can be many other organizations operating, having their own systems, so which shares the same business environment. So therefore, in a particular given environment, there can be many other systems operating and also sharing the particular environment. And those different systems may be connected to each other through a particular shared boundary, as highlighted here, or through an interface. So if you consider an organizational context, understanding this can be easier. So if you consider the different systems that are used in organizations, the different systems may be there for different functions like sales and marketing, accounting, production, HR, and so on. But you can see that in your organizations, those are connected through a shared boundary. It is easy to remember that they are connected through an interface. So through that interface, one system can be connected to another system, and then they are in a position to share data and information and other content between those systems. Through the interface, we can connect, and thereafter we are in a position to share different content between those systems. Then figure 1.18 also illustrates the concept of an open system. That is a system that interacts with other systems in its environment. Now, figure 1.18 illustrates the concept of an open system, which interacts with basically other systems in the environment. Now, how do you see it here? Can you see any interactions with this particular system with other systems in the environment? Now, here we have this specific system, the organizational system. Can you see any interactions it has with the environment?
Yes, sir. We can see an interaction.
Yeah.
Because inputs are coming from the environment, as well as outputs are transferred to the environment. Yeah, even though there is only one system with the community and competitors, they are also having systems.
Yeah, the first part that you said is right. Input we basically take from the environment, and output we basically transfer back to the environment. And what else you mentioned? I couldn't get it clear.
So here, even though we are within the environment like this white color environment, outside that environment also we can see competitors, communities, and all other those stuffs. So they also having systems. Therefore, because the environment means an open system to the other facts. Therefore, anyway, we are going to have a system that will be impacted by the other systems which are prevailing in the environment.
Okay. Yeah. So, but without making it much complex, we can, for the moment, we can say that basically we interact with the system to get the outputs, get the inputs into the organization, and we interact with the environment basically to send our outputs to the environment, which is illustrated in the next couple of points also. In this diagram, the system exchanges inputs and outputs with its environment. We could say that it is connected to its environment by input and output interfaces. So basically, we are connected to the particular environment through the input and output interfaces. So that is how we connect with the environment. And so after connecting, we may connect to different other systems. So it can be the systems of suppliers. It can be systems of maybe some other trading partners to get the necessary inputs. So likewise, output, we can again connect with our distributors or wholesalers, retailers, and so on. So there can be different connections that we make with. Finally, a system that has the ability to change itself or its environment to survive is an adaptive system. Our system cannot be a static system because the environment changes. So when the environment changes, and if the system doesn't change, that system may not be in a position to survive in that particular environment in the long run. So therefore, we should be able to adapt to the changes taking place in the environment. So otherwise, here it says we should be able to change the environment according to our requirements. So we may be in a position to do it in certain instances, but controlling the environment is very, very difficult. And so the environment basically changes, and most of the time we will have to adapt to the particular changes in order to survive in that particular environment. But there can be instances where we may be in a position to influence the environment. Now, if we are a monopoly or if there is an oligopoly or something like that, where the particular organization in a monopolistic situation or a couple of organizations in an oligopolistic situation may be in a position to influence the environment to a certain extent. So other than that, as I mentioned earlier, we may have to adapt to the changes taking place in the environment. Yes.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Can we take ATM machines and mobile banking system as an example to the open system?
Yeah, you can take. So they are, I think, basically subsystems which is within a broader banking system. And those systems interact with maybe stakeholders in the environment. No? So if it is an ATM system, definitely it interacts with the customers. And then, yeah.
System in the share market so that we can log into the system and make transactions. So we can sell and buy. No, that is also can be considered as open.
Yeah. It's an open system. Yes. It's a system and it's an open system. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Is there any other question regarding the discussion made up to now? Okay, thank you. We can move forward. Components of an information system. We are going to look at the components of an information system. Actually, when we gave a definition for an information system last week, I mentioned that it includes some components of an information system, but here we are going to identify, or we are going to define those components in a more formal manner. An information system is a system that accepts data resources as input and processes. Accept data resources as input and processes them into information products as output. So in an information system, what do we input? We input data, and then the processing function will transform the particular data into information as output. Figure 1.19 illustrates an information system model that expresses a fundamental conceptual framework for the major components and activities of information systems. So figure 1.19, it presents a fundamental conceptual framework for major components of an information system. We will look at what it is. So you can see 5 components are there. What are the 5 components? People and resources, software resources, hardware resources, network resources, and data resources. Now, actually, this is one way of classifying an information system, or classifying the components of an information system. And also, you should remember that this is not the only method we can classify or identify components of an information system. And different authors have utilized different methods. So, but for this particular course, please remember this particular classification that we are utilizing, where we identify 5 major components of an information system. Then the information system also has the 3 basic components, or 3 basic functions: input, processing, and output. Input of data resources, then processing data into information, and output of information products. So as we highlighted earlier, basically the processing function transforms the input into an output. So input into an output, but output actively basically involves in transferring the generated output to the relevant places, or to the ultimate end users, to the ultimate destinations. So therefore, this activity is not the one which generates an output. So please remember that one. This is the activity which basically transfers the generated output, which has been generated through the processing function, to the relevant places, to the ultimate destinations. Then we will have control of system performance, and even though the term feedback is not included here, in order to have control, the feedback should be there. Therefore, we have to assume that feedback is embedded here under the control function. So which can be used to monitor the performance of the system, and then again take corrective action if necessary. And with processing, we are in a position to store the particular data resources or the information that have been generated by the particular system for future use. So those are the activities, functions, and activities performed by an information system. And under each component, we have subcategories identified here, which is illustrated in the next, I think, 2 slides or so. Yes, people resources include IS specialists and end users. Now, IS specialists are the one who are IT professionals, or IS professionals who are involved in the development and implementation and maintenance of these IT-based systems. Development, implementation, and maintenance of IT-based systems. Then who are the end users?
customers or something?
Sorry?
It depends on the system. Normally customers or something users.
Yes,
Depend.
they are the ultimate users of the particular system. Now, they are not technical people, and they are not the technical staff attached to the organization, and they are the other users. And if it is the organization, they are the other employees. So there can be an IT department which consists of these IS specialists or IT professionals, the software engineers, database managers, and so on. Now they are coming under the first category, and all other employees will be considered as end users. They are the users of the particular system. Then hardware resources, again, we have two maybe subcomponents, machines, then storage media. The machines include the computers, the servers, the printers, scanner machines, or the switches, whatever it is, the hardware components that are used within the organization. And there can be different storage media like hard disk storage and maybe USB storage, optical storage, and even cloud storage. Likewise, different storage media may be utilized by the organization.
So can we consider clouds under hardware resources?
No, they are considered under storage. If it is cloud storage, we are considering it under storage media. But if we are utilizing the particular, say, network, cloud network, we may consider it here.
Okay, sir.
Then we are moving to the third one, software resources. It can include the programs. Programs being the software or the information system that we use. And programs can include the operating systems in the organization, used in the organization, and other specific applications like Office applications or word processing, Excel, PowerPoint, and other specific applications like payroll, accounting systems, and so on. And procedures can include procedures in relation to data entry, and the organization may specify who are going to enter the data and how are they going to enter data or when are they going to enter data and so on. There can be some procedures specified, and also there can be some guidelines or procedures for processing data. And also when it comes to updating data, again, there can be some specific procedures specifying who can update and when they have to update the particular data. And also there can be procedures in relation to distribution of the generated outputs and when the particular outputs should be generated. It can be a sales report, it can be a payroll report, whatever it is. There can be some procedures specified within the organization which guides or which should be followed by the employees within the organization in performing certain tasks. Then data resources include both databases and knowledge bases. I mentioned last time when it comes to an organization, through the transactions, mostly we generate data. And but there can be instances where we generate some knowledge or we capture some knowledge from different sources, whether it is internal sources or external sources. And so then knowledge will not be shared in databases. Knowledge will be shared in places identified as knowledge bases. And so I think we mentioned earlier that there are some specific systems like expert systems which are used in processing the knowledge. But basically the other information systems access the data that are used in that are stored in databases. Then network resource includes all communications media and the specific networks like intranet, extranet, even the internet, and so on. And communication media are the ones which we use to communicate data over the particular network. And there can be a particular wired network within the organization. And when it comes to a wired network, there are specific wires that we utilize. So depending on the organization, they may utilize different types of wired connections. And you may have heard like Cat5, Cat6 cables and so on. And also there can be other microwave communications media that are used like maybe Wi-Fi connections or wireless communications within the organization. And also we can highlight communication media like satellite communication media, which may utilize, or which we may have to utilize depending on the requirements. So also we may have fiber optic communication media. Likewise, there can be different communication media that we utilize to communicate the data and information over the networks that we utilize for our transactions, or that for our processors, for our processing. Okay, so is there any question regarding the 5 components? So there was a question regarding end users. Basically, we say that except the IT professionals, all other employees within an organization is considered as end users. So they are not involved in developing information systems, they are not involved in implementing information systems, and they are not involved in maintaining those systems. So they are basically using the system. They are the users, ultimate users. So therefore, they are identified as end users. Okay, we are moving to the last slide here, data versus information. Data, raw facts, observations about physical phenomena or business transactions. Now, data, raw facts and observations. So they are the ones which we capture directly from certain incidents, from certain occurrences, or from certain business transactions. So they are the ones which are there as it is. So the data which are captured as it is. So they are in raw form. And information is data that has been converted into meaningful and useful context for end users. So information is the data which has been converted into a meaningful and useful context. Now, therefore, when we consider data, they are not useful and they are not meaningful because they are in raw form. And when they are in raw form, we are not in a position to make decisions out of the particular data. So with data, we are not in a position to take decisions. So that is why they are not considered useful, or they are not considered meaningful. So, but information is the data which has been transformed into a meaningful form, into a useful form for the end users, or for the users of the particular information. They can be managers or executives or other users of the organization. 2 examples are given here for data and information. Data is names, quantities, and dollar amounts in relation to sales. The names of, say, names of the products that we have sold, the quantities that we have sold in relation to each of the product, and the amounts of the amount in dollars, amount in rupees of the particular sales. Now, sales information is the amount of sales by product type, product or the sales by sales territory, or sales by salesperson. Now, that means these particular data is processed to identify the sales made in relation to each product category, so each product type, and also in relation to each sales territory or each sales region, and also to indicate the sales made by each salesperson. So you can divide the particular sales transaction that we have made according to these say categories. So then that is information upon which we can take some decisions. So that is the difference between data and information. Is there anything not clear regarding data and information? Yeah, it seems everything is clear. We'll move to the next chapter. Yeah, I think I talked with the microphone in mute mode. So we are moving to chapter 2, competing with information technology. And here we are going to look at how we can utilize information technology to compete with others or with our competitors. So that is the general focus, but we will focus on many areas in this particular chapter in relation to the use of information technology. There are 5 learning objectives. First one is identify basic competitive strategies and explain how a business can use information technology to confront the competitive forces it faces. Now, we are going to look at 2 important areas here, the competitive strategies and the competitive forces. So we are going to identify the basic competitive strategies that an organization can utilize, and also how IT can be used to confront the competitive forces it faces. Then identify several strategic uses of IT and give examples of how they give competitive advantages to a business. So we are going to look at several strategic uses of IT and see how the organizations can gain competitive advantage from those strategic uses. Give examples of how business process reengineering frequently involves the strategic use of IT. Now, one of the strategic use of IT is considered as business process reengineering. So we are going to look at how an organization can do it with the help of IT. then identify the business value of using internet technologies to become an agile competitor and to form a virtual company. Then we are going to look at how an organization can utilize internet technologies to become an agile competitor or an agile organization, and also to form a virtual company. So giving various benefits to the organization. Explain how knowledge management systems can help a business gain strategic advantages. So then finally, we are going to look at how knowledge management systems can be used to gain some strategic advantage or competitive advantage for an organization. So those are the learning outcomes or objectives that are going to be addressed during this particular chapter. So we are going to look at section 1, and so I think each chapter of this particular textbook consists of 2 sections. The chapter 1 also same, and the other chapters also same. We have 2 sections starting with section 1, and later on we will move to section 2. Then section 1 is fundamentals of strategic advantage. Then so we are going to look at the fundamentals, so basics behind strategic advantage. And under that, we are first going to look at strategic information technology or strategic IT. It is important to view information systems as more than a set of technologies that support efficient business operations, work group and enterprise collaboration, or effective decision making. Now, what are these 3? Can you remember? We highlighted these 3. Utilization of information technologies to support efficient business operations, work group and enterprise collaboration, or effective business decision making. Can you remember we highlighted them last time?
Yes, sir. So they are vital components of a successful business.
Yeah, vital components, and also we said that they are the basic reasons behind utilization of information technology and systems in organization. Now, I think we highlighted it in one place, saying that even though there are even though there are large number of applications, so numerous applications in an organizations, so they have 3 fundamental reasons for utilizing information systems. So those 3 included this: supporting efficient business operations, enabling this work group and enterprise collaboration, or effective supporting effective decision making. So, but here it says we have to look at information systems as something more than this. So we can, of course, get these advantages or get these benefits. So organizations may be having these areas in mind when they implement information systems. But there can be something more which can be done by information systems and technology. So therefore, we should look at those avenues, not restricting the objectives for these areas. Information technology can change the way business compete. So we can use information technology to change the way how we operate our business. So we may be used to do operations in a particular way, and IT can be used to do in a completely different way. So therefore, we may be in a position to compete with our competitors in a completely different way by utilizing information technology and by applying IT applications into the organization. We should also view information systems strategically. that is as vital competitive networks, as a means of organizational renewal, and as a necessary investment in technologies. We should look at information systems strategically. Now, these are fundamental users, which we have identified. But we should look at some strategic users of IT. So therefore, we should look at information systems strategically. So when we look at strategically, who is talking there? Strategically, we may look at our networks as competitive networks. So we can look at our networks which are used by the organization as the networks which will help us to compete with our competitors, or as networks which we can use to gain some competitive advantage over our competitor. So therefore, that is one way of looking at our information systems and technology strategically. So we can look at our network as competitive networks, so giving us an opportunity to compete with our competitors in a better way. Then as a means of organizational renewal, so we can utilize information systems to change the organization, or to redesign the organization, to renew the organization. So therefore, we should look at information systems as a mode or as a method helping us to renew our organization, and also as a necessary investment in technologies. So we should look at information systems investment as a necessary investment, which will help us to perform our which will help us to compete with our competitors, and also which will help us to gain some competitive advantage, or which will help us to survive and succeed in this particular industry. So without these particular investments, we may not be in a position to survive in the long run, and we may not be in a position to compete with our competitors and succeed in the long run. So therefore, these investments may be essential for an organization, so to gain some advantage for the organization. So those are some of the strategic maybe applications of information systems, and we can look at the information systems or we can look at information systems strategically. Continue with that, such technologies. So the technology that we invest in help a company adopt strategies and business processes that enable it to re-engineer or reinvent itself to survive and succeed in today's dynamic business environment. The technological investments that we make may help us to support the strategies that we have already developed, and we may be in a position to utilize the particular technologies that we have invested in to improve the business processes, so that we are in a position to survive and succeed in the particular industry in the long run. So therefore, the particular technological investments can be used to support the strategies that we have formulated, and also the particular technological investments can be used to support the business processes, or they can be used to re-engineer the particular business processes, or reinvent the processes or the business incomplete, so which will help the organization to survive and succeed in the long run. So therefore, the technology will enable some changes within the organization, some radical changes within the particular organization, which will help them to survive and succeed in the long run. So therefore, these technologies will be very, very critical for the organization's survival and success in the long run. Then a major role information systems applications in business is to provide effective support of a company's strategies for gaining competitive advantage. That was highlighted here also. And the particular technological investments may help our strategies, may support our strategies. And here it says it's a major role. It's a major role of information systems applications in business is to provide effective support of a company strategies for gaining competitive advantage. Why is this important? And I mentioned, I think during the last week also, now gaining competitive advantage is dependent upon our strategies. Gaining competitive is not depending upon our IT systems directly. They are depending upon the directly on the strategies we are implementing or we have implemented. So then if we can support the particular strategies with information systems and technologies, it may be easier for us to gain competitive advantage. So the information systems applications or the IT investment that we have made may help gain competitive advantage through the particular strategies by supporting the particular strategies. So therefore, a major role of information systems applications can be to support the particular strategies, enabling the organization to gain competitive advantage. This strategic role of information systems involves using information technology to develop products, services, and capabilities that give a company major advantages over the competitive forces it faces in the global marketplace. Now, here it says the strategic role. Here it says a major role is to use the particular applications or technologies to support the strategies. And by doing so, we are in a position to utilize information technology to develop products, services, and capabilities. So through the particular strategy and depending on the particular strategy, and we may be in a position to utilize information technology to develop products, services, and capabilities, giving the organization some advantage in the marketplace. So that is how it basically operates. For the IT applications are utilized by the organizations to gain competitive advantage. And so we are continuing on this particular discussion, but is there anything not clear up to now?
So, if possible, can you briefly explain what is strategic IT again with a suitable example?
Yeah, I think I will go to that one later on because we are in the halfway of this particular discussion, and we are going to look at some strategic applications later on specifically. So this is just a background highlighting that we should look at IT in a strategic manner or as a strategic resource which can be used to support the strategies formulated by the organization, ultimately giving them some competitive advantage. So maybe after discussing the other areas also, we'll see whether it is not clear to you, and then we'll come back to that one. I think it's too early to answer that question. I think that will be explained as we move on. So we'll move forward and then see whether there are other questions. This role refers to the particular strategic role we mentioned earlier, is accomplished through a strategic information architecture. This role is accomplished within the organization. That is enabled within the organization through a particular strategic information architecture. So what is meant by the strategic information architecture? It's a collection of strategic information systems that supports or shapes the competitive position and strategies of a business enterprise. Now, the strategic role of information systems within the organization is accomplished through a strategic information architecture. Now, there are several technical terms coming in, but don't get confused for the moment. I think that will be resolved when the discussion goes on. And so the strategic information architecture refers to a collection of strategic information systems which help us to shape our competitive position, or which help us to gain a competitive position in the industry, and also which support the strategies of the business organization. And there can be a set of strategic information systems used by the organization to support the strategies and also to gain some competitive position or to gain some competitive advantage. Then we are going to look at what we mean by these strategic information systems. A strategic information system can be any kind of information system. It can be a transaction processing system. It can be a management information system. It can be a decision support system. It can be an executive information system. It can be a process control system, any system which we highlighted earlier. It can even be an expert system the organization has, whatever it is. It can be any system, but what is the condition? There is a condition that uses information technology to help an organization gain a competitive advantage. That is the condition. Now, it can be any system which is used within the organization which help an organization to gain a competitive advantage or reduce a competitive disadvantage or meet other strategic enterprise objectives. So therefore, this is a strategic information system is any system within the organization, so which help an organization to gain a competitive advantage or reduce a competitive disadvantage it has right now, or support any other strategic objective set by the organization. So that is now if we take an example here, now this is a conventional example the textbooks take, and it's an old example, and I think we have talked about ATMs. Now, what is an ATM? Is it a TPS, MIS, DSS, ES, EIS? How did we classify it? The ATMs, automated teller machines, under which we can include.
It's a transaction process.
Yes, it's a transaction processing system. Why? Because it basically processes the routine transactions of a bank. So day-to-day transactions of a bank. So which is basically processed by transaction processing systems. So then the ATMs were introduced first by the Citibank in the US in 1970s. So when the Citibank introduced ATMs in the US in 1970s, so then they could gain a competitive advantage. Why? Because others did not have that particular technology and systems with them. So then customers were attracted to Citibank because of these particular systems. The customers could find an easy way to transact with ATMs. So Citibank could gain a competitive advantage for some time until other banks introduced. So basically other banks took a few years to introduce similar systems or similar ATM systems for their banks, and until then the Citibank could gain a competitive advantage. So after other banks introduced ATMs or similar systems, the Citibank lost the competitive advantage they could gain because other banks also have similar systems. So that is one thing, but there are two other things identified here: reducing a competitive disadvantage. Now, maybe if we take the same example, the ATM example. Now the Citibank has introduced ATMs, and therefore the Citibank got a competitive advantage. Now others are in a competitive disadvantage. Sorry, others are in a competitive disadvantage. Then how can they reduce the competitive disadvantage? Again, by implementing similar systems and technologies in their banks. So as we highlighted earlier, the other banks started implementing similar systems after the Citibank, and it took some time. But after implementing them, they could reduce the competitive disadvantage, or they could eliminate the competitive disadvantage they had. And also there can be some other strategic objectives set by the organization, maybe in relation to reaching a particular market, or reaching a particular percentage of customer base, something like that, or reaching a particular sales amount, aggregate sales amount. So there can be some strategic objectives. And if the particular systems help us to achieve the particular objectives, then that is considered as a strategic information system. So that is basically about the strategic information systems. And is there something not clear about the definition of strategic information systems? I mentioned it can be any system used within the organization, but the condition is that it has to support the organization to gain a competitive advantage, or it should support to reduce a competitive disadvantage the organization has right now, or it should help the organization to achieve some other strategic objectives set by the organization. Is there any thing not clear about strategic information systems?
So it was clear.
Yeah.
So can you differentiate information technology from information systems? Because now we know what is an information system, but can you briefly?
Yeah, information technology can be used to give a broader definition. And so I think when we refer to the particular earlier information systems, the components of information systems, and it had a number of components like people, data, resources, the software, the networks, and so on. So likewise, when we consider all those things, again, we can consider them as information technology. And when it comes to the information systems components, you could identify a specific component as software containing the programs and procedures, and where we highlighted the information systems that we use there. So therefore, information technology consists of a broader definition. So it can include the information systems as well. So, but it can definitely include other technologies that we utilize, other hardware components that we utilize, and so on.
It means information system is like a subsystem of IT. It means that the information technology is a broader concept than information.
It has a broader definition, and according to that particular classification, it is a subcomponent there, as you highlighted there. But again, there are different definitions given. And so I will see whether there is a specific definition given for IT in this particular course and let you know the difference. but in general, we can say it has a broader definition.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, when we talk about information system, there are components like people, technology, procedures. Then the information technology is one component of a system. Is it? Am I correct?
Yeah. That is that confusion can be there. So I think I will come out with a better classification, because in general it has a broader definition. So without making it maybe too much confusing, I will come up with I will look at whether any specific definition is given here in this book in relation to IT and IS, and then I will elaborate it. Okay, is there any specific issue, especially in relation to strategic information systems? Yeah, okay, I think I will move to this particular point after the break, because it is connected with the next figure, and actually it focuses on an important aspect of competitive forces and also the competitive strategies. So we will take 30 minutes break, and we'll meet after the break.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Recording stopped.